guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week to try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on, it's gonna be fun.
The world mourning the loss of a civil rights giant.
Our flag is red, white, and blue, but I might, we're all precious in God's sight.
Reverend Jesse Jackson was one of the most prominent politicians in the 80s and 90s, blazing the trail for generations to follow. All of his life, the Reverend Jesse Jackson preaching, exhorting, demanding justice, in a quest to help his people and nation overcome.
We ain't the bottom, we the foundation.
Always marching, civil rights nonviolent soldier. There he was, shoulder to shoulder with Martin Luther King Jr. after witnessing the beatings of Bloody Sunday on television. Jackson eventually became one of the top lieutenants in the critical Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which challenged the Jim Crow South's withering oppression. A witness to history, he was there on that fateful April evening when King was struck down by an assassin's bullet.
I tried to feel his head, and I asked him, I said, Dr. King, do you hear me? Dr. King, do you hear me? And he didn't say anything.
After a leadership struggle with King's successor, Reverend Ralph Abernathy, Jackson split from the SCLC and formed a new organization, People United to Save Humanity, PUSH.
Beautiful.
After Dr. King, I don't think anyone captured the spirit of America like Reverend Jackson, and he took the movement north. I think Jesse Jackson was the link from that generation of King and them all the way to my generation, and then the generation behind me.
The first wave of the civil rights movement had succeeded in breaking down significant barriers, but Jackson's primary focus was on economic empowerment.
We know that we are worthy of respect and protection, but nobody really knows our name, and so we're really still struggling.
He broke boundaries in politics, twice running for president, first in 1984 under the banner of a Rainbow Coalition. In 1988, he was, for a time, the Democratic Party's frontrunner for the presidential nomination, before eventually losing the nomination to Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis.
I'd rather go down in the stirring fight than drowse to death at the sheltered shore.
Jackson also took on the role of freelance international negotiator, meeting with some of the world's most brutal tyrants.
Overseas, the American black activist Jesse Jackson has become an intermediary in the Middle East.
In 1984, he met with Syria's Hafez al-Assad.
Goodman and the Reverend Jackson arrived at Andrews Air Force Base,
securing the release of downed American naval officer, Lieutenant Robert Goodman. In 1990, he held talks with Saddam Hussein to free foreign nationals being held in Iraq as human shields. And in 1999, he went behind enemy lines again to meet with Slobodan Milosevic to negotiate the return of 3 American prisoners of war. At times, he was a spiritual advisor, counseling President Clinton in his darkest hour, facing impeachment over a sex scandal. But Jackson had his own moments where he fell far short of what he had championed. In the mid-1980s, facing controversy for allegedly making a highly offensive remark about the Jewish community.
God is not finished with me yet.
And as an ordained minister, having to admit in 2001, he had fathered a child after an affair with a former staffer. Although somewhat diminished, Jackson leaned in on his faith of forgiveness and redemption and kept fighting, keeping his eyes on the prize. He saw one of his hopes realized on election night in 2008 in Chicago's Grant Park.
America, I have never been more hopeful than I am tonight that we will get there.
He wept as President-elect Barack Obama delivered his victory speech. In recent years, the effects of age and a long illness had slowed his gait, but not his spirit. Jackson going public with his private health battle, dealing with a myriad of health issues. He was hospitalized in Chicago in mid-November and released a few weeks later. Through it all, Jackson's faith and hope in what America could be endured. Jackson's family saying he passed away peacefully in his sleep. He was 84 years old.
America will get better and better. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. I love you very much.
No matter how you feel about the man, you cannot deny the impact. Yes, very prominent figure, as they said, civil rights era and beyond. Reverend Jesse Jackson, unfortunately, is no longer with us. Again, the man was an influential figure, no doubt about it. And at the same time, he did have his faults, but unlike some other politicians, he took accountability. But we're not gonna dwell too much on that. We just want to acknowledge the man and his accomplishments and give him his flowers. And of course, peace condolences out to his family. That being said, guys, today's date, February 18, 2025. This is how the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, most Will Buchanan. The Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before we get started, I got to let you know that we basically pride ourselves on journalism. We only cite from reputable sources with award-winning journalism and journalists that are very accredited and trustworthy and reliable. We do not do sensational news like Fox News, The Blaze, The Daily Beast, Newsmax. I guess we can count CBS among the ranks now. We don't do that, whether it's left or right. At the same time, guys, we do try to watch your language where words do fly. And at the same time, there may be things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers. So your discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, outside of giving a fallen civil rights icon and figure their flowers, let's go to Trump's lapdog, otherwise showing that yes, you can neuter the Attorney General's office if you put in a loyalist. Pam Bondi was in a 5-hour hearing last week, of course, over the Epstein files and many other things, but yes, mostly Epstein files. And well, question-wise, we shouldn't be surprised how she answered these things.
So I really have just one question for you. How many of Epstein's co-conspirators have you indicted? How many perpetrators are you even investigating?
This administration released over 3 million pages of documents, over 3 million, and Donald Trump signed that law to release all of those documents. He is the most transparent president in the nation's history. And none of them asked Merrick Garland over the last 4 years one word about Jeffrey Epstein. How ironic is that? You know why? Because Donald Trump, the Dow right now is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing.
I mean, I don't know why more people weren't laughing.
Yeah, we all should be laughing because you were asked a simple question that the AG should be able to answer. With this information that you have, with these 3 million with these 3 million documents that you say you have there been any charges brought up against co-conspirators of Epstein? You can say yes or no. But instead, Trump's lapdog decided to go on this tirade of, and I can't believe I'm saying this tirade of simply put, well, no, because the Democrats didn't do it when they had the files. Why don't you ask them? And you know, as she's fumbling through papers, which we'll get to momentarily, why she was fumbling through papers. Why, above all else, is her answer the Dow's over 50K? And then get mad when the committee is laughing at you. The committee is laughing at you because you are basically the most. I thought William Barr. I thought Jeff Sessions. I thought those two were the worst examples of attorney generals. Income Pam Bondi, hold my beer and purse. She's done nothing.
except read what's been fed to her. And instead of, and to answer these questions before we go to the next person that brought questions for her. And I love how only Republicans and those who follow conservatives all say the same doggone thing. You know what they always say? Well, the Democrats had it. Why didn't they pursue it? Lovely question, because it's been answered multiple times. The reason why the Democrats couldn't pursue Epstein, especially when he was alive, was that there were already open investigations. Open investigations were happening around the time of the Biden-Harris presidency. At the same time, they were still gathering information, and keep in mind, Epstein was still alive. At the same time, what Republicans won't say is who held up the process during those investigations. The Republican parties. The Republican Party held up those investigations. The Republican Party held up with injunctions during active investigations that were done by Merrick Garland and the DOJ at the time. They held it up, they roadblocked it, they slow walked it. So, of course, Merrick Garland at the time couldn't do what Pam Bondi should be doing right now because the Republicans held them up for a reason. And I think we all can say this. And maybe and you know what? Maybe we'll give the tinfoil hat community this one time that there is a group of people, group of very powerful, influential people, also pedos, that might be using the Republican Party, the Attorney General's office, and the office of the president to keep themselves from being prosecuted. And you can tell because the one individual who could literally bring charges against everybody with the information that her Department of Justice has, and she does stuff like that. The Dow. So let me get this straight. You're telling me that we're supposed to be okay with our stock market doing so well when a ring of child trafficking, sex trafficking was going on among very influential people, and we're supposed to be okay with that because the stock market's doing well? Again, Pam Bondi, we are not surprised about you. But at the same time, even Representative Jay Powell brings up a wonderful point that I think a lot of people are missing. But I just want to play it again because this screams volumes.
From Jeffrey Epstein's horrific sex trafficking ring. They have shown such incredible courage in speaking out, in demanding accountability to bring the predators and pedophiles to justice. The Epstein Files Transparency Act required your Department of Justice to disclose the perpetrators connected with Epstein's criminal activities and to redact the information of survivors to protect their identities. Let me show you what actually happened. First, in violation of the law, your department has shown a pattern of redacting the names of powerful predators. Here behind me is one example of an email from Epstein to a man whose name was redacted. The email reads, quote, "Where are you? Are you okay? I loved the torture video." Only after members of Congress demanded that we see the unredacted files did the world learn the name of this individual, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayman, the chairman and CEO of a company that had financial ties to President Trump's business and personal ties to Trump's advisor, Steve Bannon. Second, the survivors were not similarly protected, also in violation of the law. Here is another email titled Epstein Victim List. We have blurred the names of the survivors for their protection, but your Department of Justice initially released this list of 32 survivors' names with only one name redacted, along with numerous files that disclose not only the names, the emails, and the addresses of survivors, but also nude photographs and even the identities of Jane Does who had been protected for decades until your department released their names. Survivors are now telling us that their families are finding out for the first time that they were trafficked by Epstein. In their words, quote, "This release does not provide closure. It feels like a deliberate attempt to intimidate survivors, punish those who came forward, and reinforce the same culture of secrecy that allowed Epstein's crimes to continue for decades." To the survivors in the room, if you are willing, please stand. And if you are willing, please raise your hands if you have still not been able to meet with this Department of Justice. Please know for the record that every single survivor has raised their hand. Attorney General Bondi, you apologized to the survivors in your opening statement for what they went through at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein. Will you turn to them now and apologize for what your Department of Justice has put them through with the absolutely unacceptable release of the Epstein files and their information?
Congresswoman, you sat before Merrick Garland sat in this chair twice.
Attorney General Bondi,
No, can I finish my answer?
No, I'm going to reclaim my time because I asked you a specific question that I would like you to answer, which is, will you turn to the survivors? This is not about anybody that came before you. It is about you taking responsibility for your Department of Justice and the harm that it has done to the survivors who are standing right behind you and are waiting for you to turn to them and apologize for what your Department of Justice has done.
Members get to ask the questions, the witness get to answer in the way they want to answer. The Attorney General can
That's
respond.
not accurate, Mr. Chairman.
Because she doesn't like the answer.
Time.
So,
Mr. Chairman,
why
I have asked
didn't she ask Merrick Garland this?
I
Twice
am reclaiming my
when he sat in
time,
my
and
chair.
when I
will
reclaim my
continue to
time,
answer.
it is
Mr. Chairman, the gentlelady's
I'm
reclaimed her
not going
time.
to get in the gutter for her theatrics.
The time belongs to the gentlelady. The gentlelady has 17 seconds.
Thank you. You're not going to answer this question, so let me just
Chairman,
say
I'll
this.
direct it to
What
you.
a massive
No, I'm
cover-up.
answering a question.
Chairman, will you restore her time? The witness is
I'm not
interrupted.
going to get in the gutter with this woman.
Stop the
She's
time
doing
and
theatrics.
let me have my time.
The gentlelady from Washington controls the time. The gentlelady has 17 seconds. You can proceed with your final 17 seconds.
What a massive cover-up this has been and continues to be. Donald Trump made the release of the Epstein files the center of his political campaign because he thought it would benefit him. Then you got into office, Attorney General, claimed to have a client list, only to then say that there was no list. Your deputy, Todd Blanche, met alone with Ghislaine Maxwell and transferred her to a minimum security prison. And now you continue the cover-up. And I wish that you would turn around to the survivors who are standing right behind you and on a human level,
Chairman,
Chair now recognizes the chair.
on what you have done.
Time of the gentlelady.
So what's amazing about that, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that, well, Pam Bondi doesn't care. She's like Melania Trump if Melania was an AG. She gave her, again, these were easy, I won't say easy questions. These are questions that you expect someone who is the top lawyer in the United States, top prosecutor in the United States, is supposed to turn around and be like, I apologize for my actions, the actions of the DOJ. I will make it a priority that you are all heard, that you are all being listened to, and we take as many statements or evidence that you want to give us. How hard is that? But it is Pam Bondi. See, this is why I keep saying, guys, about Pam Bondi, because that book that she had right there that she was flipping through the notes, which they didn't say, the DOJ tracked everything the Democrats were looking into, by the way. Yeah, the Department of Justice gave 4 laptops to the committee that was looking into it. So 4 laptops were given to the Democrats. And keep in mind, this was well over 100 people. Well over 100 people in this committee had to share 4 laptops. On top of that, everything that they looked into was collected and given to Bondi. Bondi literally had right in front of her not only her notes as far as what they looked into, but also previous gotcha moments. That's true. That's the thing. She tried to do that with so many other people. When Merrick Garland was sitting in front of you, and when Merrick Garland was sitting right here, did you ask him? And that tells me off the bat, and I hate to say this, I hate to say this, I really do. But this is what happens when you give Diaper Don a second shot at being president. He learned from his mistakes. He didn't elect the smartest, most qualified individuals. He elected loyalists. He elected people who are going to go up there, who are going to praise him as he's the next best thing since sliced bread. They're going to sit there and admonish those that are trying to actually get answers. Be defiant, be loud, be belligerent, and ignore or insult. That's all of them. That is his entire administration. Because nobody in his administration understands accountability. None of them do, nor do they want to. And again, with Pam Bondi, with several victims right there, you could have made a difference. You could have sat there and made us say, okay, maybe there is some hope. Instead of doing exactly what we knew you would do. Wouldn't even turn around. You would deny, deflect, and insult. And then you got the chairman, Jim Jordan, who actually should be in jail anyway because of what happened to Ohio State. Because yeah, he knew. My own opinion, but he knew. But it's the fact of the matter that Pam Bondi simply doesn't care. It's also the reason why I sit there and say the midterms are important. If you think for 1 second Pam Bondi is going to charge anybody from the Epstein files that isn't related to Trump, not going to happen. I don't even think we're going to see anybody brought. I don't think we're going to see anybody indicted, honestly, especially when currently in the Epstein files, half of his administration is in it. Half of his administration is in the Epstein files. And the DOJ is hard at work making sure that Trump's name isn't anywhere found in those files, even though we know already. As much as he tries to deny it, we know. This is the biggest cover-up being done in front of us since Watergate. That alone is saying a lot. And at the same time, this is why I say it, I hate to say it, Pam Bondi will not be the person that gets justice for the victims of Jeffrey Epstein and his co-conspirators. Because his co-conspirators right now are too busy making sure that Diaper Don keeps his lapdog in order, because all she's doing at this moment is making sure that there's enough Sharpies in the DOJ to mark out Diaper Don's names on these files. That's why the midterms are so important, because unfortunately, unless the Democrats get overwhelming support, unless the Democrats get overwhelming majority in the House and the Senate, unfortunately, that's the Epstein files are going to be. Just files while the pedos are still out there. And Pam Bondi is still employed. Because if you think she's going to resign after that, hell no. Because she's a loyalist. And much like loyalist to a man, baby, diaper wearing, catheter wearing, shitting on himself constantly individual, as long as they kiss the ring, their jobs are covered. They go against him, they're never heard from again. Don't believe me? Ask Liz Cheney. That being said, speaking about Diaper Donald, he is continuing with his bullshit board of peace. And, well, again, he really does believe he's actually doing the right thing.
Deep dive. We want to go back to President Trump's Board of Peace. The signing ceremony for the board was held earlier today on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos, the president calling it one of the most consequential bodies ever created.
I think it's going to happen. To end decades of suffering, stop generations of hatred and bloodshed, and forge a beautiful, everlasting, and glorious peace for that region and for the whole region of the world.
More than 24 countries so far have accepted the invitation to join the Board of Peace, but none of our European allies have signed on yet, some even flat out rejecting the idea. So for more on this, I want to bring in ABC.
So I'm gonna stop it right there because I gotta take it right here. Because, ladies and gentlemen, this is the bullshit board of peace, right? So far, each of these countries, tell me if you noticed something. Because, again, the journalist already said it. Our European allies currently with the U.S. are not on this list. Well, what do you have? Pakistan, Argentina, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Belarus, Bulgaria, Hungary, Indonesia, Israel, Jordan, Kosovo, UAE, Turkey, or United Arab Emirates, for all those who don't know, Vietnam, Morocco, Qatar. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a list of a board of peace. What this basically is all the people that have a piece of Diaper Dawn. That's it. And this board of peace that he brings up so much, you do understand for his board of peace has a $5 billion price tag, supposedly toward rebuilding Gaza. You know, the same Gaza that American and Israel military forces have bombed to the Stone Age. And now his board of peace, we're going to rebuild Gaza, but not holding Israel responsible. Which I know a lot of people go, oh, well, Will, you're telling me you're against Israel? Israel, let me ask this thing about Israel, because a lot of people kill me. What did Israel do for the U.S.? Israel gets free health care. They get free education from us. They get multiple applications of medical, military funding. Israel might as well be the welfare queen of the Israel might as well be the welfare child of the United States, with Netanyahu being the welfare queen. But I say this all the time. Israel's only point, because a lot of people say, well, Israel is a strategic position for the U.S. We have 11 bases around the U.S. That's 5 more bases than we have in Afghanistan. That's 3 more bases than we have in Iraq. Sometimes you got to admit a spade is just a spade. That simple fact of it is you have a nationalist Christian society that wants to protect Israel because, well, of a certain city that's there that's considered the Holy Land. And at the same time, it all comes down to money. That's why Netanyahu always comes around Netanyahu comes around like a bad parent that still wants to let the child know that they love them, but disappear as soon as the accolades are over. That's Netanyahu. Comes to the U.S. every once in a while to speak before Congress, gets a standing ovation by the Republicans, not the Democrats, and then leaves to make sure the money keeps flowing into Israel. But miss me with the bullshit of the Board of Peace. Because Gaza at this point, because again, Diaper Dawn's friends want to go in and rebuild Gaza in their own image. Resorts, casinos, you name it, they want to put it there. And the people, they want them displaced. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what imperialism looks like. No matter, they can call it imperialism. They can say this isn't imperialism. The imperialism. Damn, I am tongue-tied today. They can call it imperialism all they want. It is simply, it is imperialism, but it's force. They're trying to call it freedom is what I'm trying to get at. Because I'm tongue-tied right now, but bear with me. They call it freedom, but really it's oppression. The same thing they do in Israel, the same thing they're trying to do in Minnesota, the same thing they're trying to do everywhere else, as ICE is still trying to build facilities, especially in my home state of Tennessee, which shout out to Lebanon, Tennessee, Wilson County. Them folks came out and protested and said, hell no, we don't want a detention center. We don't want a detention center in our city. And after all said and done, ICE decided not to purchase a facility there because that's what they're doing. They're purchasing facilities in states to quote unquote house illegal immigrants for deportation. But with the Gestapo ICE not as popular as they used to be, and the fact that we are in a partial government shutdown, it's going to be a fun day for ICE agents because you're about to be put in the same department as the FAA and TSA. How does it feel to work without being paid?
Democrats are refusing to fund the Department of Homeland Security until Republicans agree on reforms to immigration enforcement tactics. That means 90% of Homeland Security workers, including personnel at the TSA, Secret Service, Coast Guard, and FEMA, are working without a paycheck. A major impact on this busy travel week could be at the nation's airports. During previous government shutdowns, many TSA workers called out sick, leading to long security lines and delays. Here's what Democrats are demanding to end the standoff. They want to require judicial warrants for immigration arrest on private property, ban ICE agents from wearing masks, and require agents wear body cameras and ID numbers on their uniforms.
We need masks off, we need cameras on, and we need every ICE officer to be identified. ICE is rogue, out of control.
But Trump administration officials insist they won't let the shutdown stop their agenda.
I don't like the masks either. These men and women have to protect themselves.
Despite the ICE drawdown in Minnesota after the fatal shootings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, officials say a small security force will stay in Minnesota.
We already removed well over 1,000 people. Monday, Tuesday, we'll remove several hundred more.
The partial government shutdown comes ahead of a high-stakes week for the Trump administration. U.S. and Iranian officials head to Switzerland tomorrow for a new round of nuclear talks as the U.S. builds up forces in the region. And on Thursday, President Trump's newly created Board of Peace is expected to meet in Washington. Trump says members will discuss $5 billion in commitments to help rebuild Gaza. Some reports estimate rebuilding the war-torn territory could cost up to $70 billion. And back to the home.
Yeah, well, let's be honest. The reconstruction is not going to be helping toward Gaza and its citizens. We already know what that is. But yes, that Democrats, I will say this in one thing alone. Could you guys please don't cave? Don't cave. If there's one thing I wish you guys wouldn't do, don't cave. Because if this whole thing, if the partial shutdown is to fund the Department of Homeland Security, which basically funds ICE, let it die. Let these ICE agents, because for some ICE agents out there, they're not getting paid. You didn't get the $50,000 bonus because you didn't read the fine print, because let's be honest, a lot of ICE agents really can't read. At the same time, a lot of y'all are not getting insurance benefits. You're actually denied by Diaper Donald. So I don't feel bad for ICE agents. I don't. Because much like the military, you can ignore unlawful orders. You can. And yet you choose to pursue this. So no, I don't feel bad for ICE agents. I don't feel bad that you're not getting paid. I don't feel bad that you don't have insurance. I don't feel bad for the fact that you are going after everybody, not the illegal immigrants that you claim. At the same time, thanks to Kristi Noem and her spending, the actual Department of Homeland Security's budget has exploded. I think they've actually spent, if not 2-3 times more than what they usually get. And now they're in front of Congress asking for more. So Democrats, talk to all of your representatives. We do not need another hateful eight situation that wanted to split off because they thought they were doing the right thing. Oh, if you Democrats will just agree with us, we'll have a vote on expanding the Obamacare's tax credits. It won't be a vote in favor of it, but we'll have a vote. And 8 Democrats caved. How about this time? You Democrats stay strong. If the government has to shut down, the government has to shut down. And let's see how ICE works when they don't get paid anymore. Right along with TSA agents, right along with FAA traffic controllers, right along with Coast Guard, because it is completely and utterly crazy that in the midst of a government shutdown, federal workers don't get paid, but Congress does. Senators and representatives still get paid out of the U.S. Treasury if there's a government shutdown. And yet, that's never been changed. Figure that one out. But also why the Gestapo ICE is also news again, because lo and behold, another person lost their life because of these untrained bootjacking idiots and how they pursue people.
Starts now with breaking news.
Good afternoon, and thank you for watching The News at Noon. I'm Mike Sela. We do begin with that breaking news, sad news. WTOC is at the scene of a deadly crash that happened on Whitfield Avenue and Truman Parkway in Savannah this morning that claimed the life of a beloved teacher at Hess K-8 school. WTOC's Cam McCann has been on the scene all morning long. And Cam, what more have you learned about the crash, and what else can you tell us about the victim?
Mike, like you said, this was a deadly crash that occurred earlier this morning. Chatham EMS responding to a call right around 7:25. They occurred on the scene around a little bit after 4 minutes later, to be specific. And it happened right behind me, just that inner bump right there between the roads, right here on Whitfield Avenue. Now, this involved Linda Davis, who later died, a Hess Elementary School teacher who's just about a mile away from her classroom at the time of this crash. Now, when Chatham EMS did respond, you could see we got footage from a GDOT camera this morning. That's around 10 minutes or 50 minutes after the EMS response. WTOC saw Homeland Security officers and at least one enforcement and removal officer as well on the scene. Shortly after those EMS vehicles arrived, they had to extract Davis out of her vehicle, and they took her to Memorial Hospital in critical condition. She passed away later in the morning, just a little over a mile from the elementary school classroom. Like I said, the road cleared up right around 10:35 in the morning, just a couple of hours after. And it is functioning properly at this time, nothing obstructing the road. But we are looking into more. There's a lot of unanswered questions regarding this. We've reached out to Homeland Security to learn the nature of their involvement on this crash. There were 3 vehicles that were involved at the scene and that were later towed away by SAP's towing company, SAP's wreckage service. But we will have more coming on the news at 3. But for now, live in Chatham County, Cam McCann, WTOC News.
So when it comes down to it, what other explanation is there? Because, again, for those in law enforcement, correct me if I'm wrong, when it comes to pursuits, sometimes you go with it, sometimes you let it go. It's always preservation of life, right? Preservation of life. You know, you can't track a suspect. The suspect is traveling at a high rate of speed and you're following him. It's not a good idea. Say, for instance, they are weaving through traffic. You would cause a wreck. And is the wreck worth the arrest? A lot of officers, I would like to think, that are good at their jobs there and say, no, we'll back off. It's no point trying to go after him because we will cause an accident trying to stop one individual. ICE agents, however, don't care. Because here's the thing. It's just that these ICE agents don't pursue properly. They're not trained, no lack thereof. They've been given a green light to racially profile. And at the same time, guys, at the same doggone time, they will cause more issues than actually helping. And that's what happened in this case. So yes, a beloved educator lost their life because ICE agents did not act properly. But Will, it was the person that we're chasing that he crashed into them. So ICE is absolved? No, ICE is not absolved. This is one of those times where there needs to be accountability. And I know accountability in the Trump administration is like, it's like Paula Deen teaching African-American studies. It doesn't make any sense. But that's the thing I'm getting at here, folks, is that there needs to be accountability. Will it happen with the current administration with ICE? Probably not. They'll probably sweep it on the rug. They'll probably sit there and say the officers were cleared of any wrongdoing. At the same time, a school, a family has lost a beloved person, teacher, and from what I was understanding, all around loved by everybody. And this is why I sit there and say that ICE definitely needs to be checked. Whole mother hardly. But I do want to bring this up because we need to have a little bit of sunshine. A guy that we've missed since 2008. We've missed him. God, we've missed him. But former President Obama did talk about the caricature that Trump put up of him and his wife being depicted as apes, and also has some other things to say. And I'm going to be honest, kind of miss the guy, man. I kind of miss the guy in FLOTUS. I really do.
For a moment here, for the first time, former President Obama is publicly addressing President Trump's racist post depicting him and former First Lady Michelle Obama as apes. What is he saying?
Yeah, this was on a podcast interview. It was wide-ranging, and the former President Obama, he discussed how there is no longer any decorum, but he said that most Americans still find this kind of behavior troubling. He also said there's a, quote, clown show that's happening on social media and television. Take a listen to what he said.
First of all, I think it's important to recognize that the majority of the American people find this behavior deeply troubling. There's this sort of clown show that's happening in social media and on television And what is true is that there doesn't seem to be any shame about this among people who used to feel like you had to have some sort of decorum and a sense of propriety and respect for the office, right? So that's been lost.
And as a note, President Trump still has not apologized for the racist video. And the White House has taken down the video. It since has, but it's blaming it on an unnamed staffer. So that video also only coming down after an outpouring of outrage from both sides of the aisle, including from some of the president's closest allies on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, if you're talking allies, you mean Tim Scott. And let's be honest, Tim Scott's about the biggest Uncle Tom this side of an Uncle Ruckus. And I always find it funny where he backed Trump on everything, but, when he depicts black people as monkeys, hey, that's a little racist. Really, Tim Scott? Of all people? But anyway, I miss President Obama. I am a little bit biased because you know what? When we actually had a president that cared, we were a little better. We were way better off, no matter how you felt about a black man being president, because let's be honest, this is the same black man that wore a tan suit to a conference, and the Republicans were screaming impeachment over a suit. Tells you everything you want to freaking know. But yeah, deeply troubling. But I'm not gonna lie. In that case, I want Obama to get his anger translator Luther back because, man, and Mrs. Obama again, dignified, always confident, holds herself in high regard. With all due respect, Miss Obama, I know when you said when they go low, we fly high, but ma'am, nobody will judge you if you do what you want to do. No one will judge you. We will turn our heads and say we didn't see shit because she's perfect in our eyes. But moving right along, guys, again, sticking with Trump because, again, he is pushing his Save America Act, and we should be concerned, especially if you're a woman.
America Act, a measure restricting mail-in ballots requiring photo ID at polling places and mandates for proof of citizenship before registering to vote. President Trump talking about the act just moments ago.
It's the Save America Act, and the Democrats are against it. I heard one of them say, we will stop the Save America Act. No, we're trying to save America. And it has to do with largely voting. And basically, it's got three very simple points. It's got voter ID, photo ID, but voter ID with a photo, right? It's got the confirmation of U.S. citizenship. You have to be a citizen. So you have a vote.
My next guest is the author of that bill, which he says will make elections great again. Joining me now, Republican Congressman of Wisconsin, Brian Stile. Congressman, critics, of this bill say it's a solution in search of a problem, given how incredibly rare voter fraud is. Your response?
I think this is an opportunity to regain Americans' confidence in our elections. It's got two core principles. One, U.S. elections should be for U.S. citizens only, and we confirm citizenship upon registering to vote. In photo identification, to make sure that people are who they say they are. I'm of the belief that this is core common sense principles that we need in our elections across the country. It will increase Americans' confidence in our elections. And we have seen time and again, as we institute common sense election integrity in our elections, confidence goes up. And as a result, more people are likely to participate. And that's a good thing for our democracy.
So, but the Conservative Heritage Foundation found in data from the last 30 years, just a handful of reported cases of fraud amongst millions and millions of ballots cast, and none of them shifted the election outcome.
Well, this is about instilling trust in our elections. We need to make sure that we're enforcing the law. And so how do we make sure that only U.S. citizens are voting in our elections? We make sure that individuals at the point of registration show that they are U.S. citizens. It's common sense, and I think it's a core principle. And the second being that we're showing photo identification, that people are who they say they are. 36 states across the country have photo ID requirements at the point of voting. We think 50 states should have photo identification requirements. If you have to use your photo ID to board an airplane, open a bank account, or buy a six-pack of beer, you should absolutely be required to show photo identification when voting.
Don't you think that Trump is undermining trust, though, in the whole election process with this idea?
I think it's actually the opposite. I think this is our opportunity to regain America's confidence in our elections. We could look back at the state of Georgia that passed voter integrity legislation in 2021. And despite the hyperbole and fear mongering from Democrats at the time, we can look back at the past two major statewide elections in the state of Georgia. We see surging turnout and we see people satisfied with how the elections are operating. And so by putting in place common sense election integrity reforms like the Save America Act, I think we actually have a real opportunity here to instill the trust that the American people need in our elections.
But he claimed that he won the election in 2020 and he didn't. And then just recently had his FBI raid the Georgia election office and now there's an ongoing lawsuit. I mean, doesn't all of that right there cause a overall distrust in the system?
I think people actually look back at how the elections were operated in 2020 and recognize that we need clear rules of the road to reinstate the trust that all Americans need to have in how our elections are run. We can look at some of the bluest states in the country, for example, those that don't require photo ID, and recognize as a country that we are actually going to be better off if we implement common sense election integrity reforms across the country so that Americans don't need to question or do question the election results. They can have confidence that these elections are being run fairly and equally across the country.
There's also concern that it imposes barriers for people who don't have the financial means to get new ID. You say you have solutions, though. What are they?
Well, every state across the country is required to provide identification to individuals that don't have means. That's explicit at the state level and at the federal level. We need to make sure that if there is someone who truly doesn't have the financial means to be able to obtain identification, that they're able to do that. That's important. My home state of Wisconsin has that in place while we have photo identification. Making sure that this is not a financial burden is important, and I think the legislation accomplishes that goal.
Congressman Brian Stile, appreciate your time today.
Thank
you. Oh, what a load of bullshit that was. So, for all those that don't know, okay. For all those that don't know, okay. The Save America Act is basically moving the goalposts because the only person outside of Al Gore will be the only other time where an election was questioned. Al Gore, Diaper Don. Al Gore, when he was facing George Bush, sat there and said that Florida should have been his, but apparently because of a snafu, went to George Bush. It didn't help that George Bush's brother, Jeb, was actually governor of Florida at the time. But again, come to find out, after all said and done, he actually did win Florida. That was the end of that. Election integrity maintained. Fast forward, Diaper Don. They're going to rig this election against me. No, they rigged the election for you. There's a difference. At the same time, he is the only cat outside of everybody else that rides his coattails and his balls. Oh, we want a free and fair election. Elections have been fair and free since their inception. We've never had an issue until you decide to kick up dust and say there's a problem here when really we are just looking through the bullshit. So the Save America Act, it's pretty much saying, hey, we're going to need you to have a government issued ID. Okay, we got that. Driver's licenses, ID, CDLs, you name it. They're all government issued. That's not going to work anymore. What you will need is a real ID or your birth certificate or a U.S. passport. So here's the thing about that, because that's what the requirements are, guys, right? That if you have a real ID, which unfortunately we all got to, even in my state of Tennessee, I have to get a real damn ID. But the other thing is, to prove you are a U.S. citizen, you either have a U.S. passport or a birth certificate. Okay, roughly at least 50% of Americans do not have a U.S. passport. Roughly 50. It might be a little bit more, it might be a little bit less, but at least half of Americans don't have it. At the same time, there are areas you can go to. I know most post offices have a passport center. Most libraries that are nonprofit usually have passport services there, to where if you want to get a passport, they can help you there. It just depends on your city and state. But the problem is the current administration, Diaper Don, is shutting down passport locations. Is preventing those same nonprofit libraries that offer passport services can no longer do that. He's moving the goalposts, people, because you know why? Because again, for all those that don't know, I have a U.S. passport. It takes 6 weeks. It does. You go in, you take a pic, go in, get your pictures, pay your fee, wait 6 weeks, you get it in the mail. That's the end of it. Good for 10 years. The problem is it's 6 weeks. And if the State Department has a backlog, it takes longer. So imagine, if you will, those 50% or more or less of Americans that don't have a U.S. passport. And it's February. Imagine them trying to get the U.S. passports applications filled out, processed, and get it before November. Which basically is 9 months from now. Sounds easy, right? Well, it would, but again, it's this administration. They're moving the goalposts. It's going to be a backlog of people trying to get U.S. passports. It is going to be a nightmare for women. And why do you say women, William? I say women because, again, if you don't have a U.S. passport, you got to use your birth certificate. Women who are married, your birth certificate, for all those that don't know, if you don't know, it's cool. I'll gladly tell you. Once you get married, your birth certificate doesn't. Once you're married, especially if you're a woman, your birth certificate doesn't change. Sure, your social changes, driver's license, your ID, all that changes. Your birth certificate still has your maiden name. If you go by the SAVE Act that they're putting into place, that basically means you are SOL. You would not be able to vote on the SAVE Act unless you have a U.S. passport, which I just explained would be a pain in the butt to get now because of the backlog that's going to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why I keep saying the entire time, Donald Trump is trying to create a problem that doesn't exist to validate his dementia, to validate, oh, well, the election is going to be screwed if we don't do anything about it. The election was fine. You just didn't like the outcome when it didn't benefit you. When it didn't benefit you, oh, you were ready to just go scorched earth. But when it benefited you, oh, the people are smart. They knew what they wanted. They wanted me. They didn't want you. They wanted me. Why? I'm better. And he had no problem. Hence why Fulton County, Georgia is one of his targets. Not because of the fact that former DA Fannie Willis was about to nail his ass to the wall. It was the fact that he could not believe that he didn't win. And even more so, wanting the voter information from that election, because again, people forget, he did call the Georgia Secretary of State looking for 11,000 and some votes. He went looking for a number of votes to ensure that he won the state. And yet, somehow, it's not election tampering. Figure that out. But yes, the SAVE Act is nothing more than a Hail Mary because, again, they want to move the goalpost. He knows his plans are shit. His approval rating is so low that the Gallup poll's not even recording it anymore. At the same time, people are unhappy with him. And the midterms are coming up. His job is secure until events either take him out or he's in jail afterwards. But his job is secure. It's his wall. And what I mean by wall, ladies and gentlemen, not the wall he's still trying to build in Mexico. Oh, no. It's the wall that he has in Congress, the Republican Party. That party still has majority in the House and majority in the Senate. As long as that wall stands, he's safe. If that wall falls, he's cooked. And that's only if the Democrats get overwhelming majority in the House and the Senate. If they get, I'll put it this way, for all those that are wondering, If Democrats get 2/3 of Congress, Trump is gone. Understand that. If the Democrats get 2/3 of Congress, that means they have to get almost 80% of the House and 60% of the Senate. That's 2/3, roughly 2/3. They have to get at least 80% of the House, and they have to get at least 60% of the Senate, roughly, to get 2/3 of Congress. If they did that, Trump as an entire administration is cooked, because what that Congress can do on day one is call for impeachments. But that's if the Democrats get it right, they stick together, and they do what they said they're going to do, and not wait till election year to finally tell us. But the SAVE Act is bullshit. But we'll see what happens, because he's trying his hardest to get it pushed. In the meantime, we should be worried about the EPA. Why? Because Trump, once again, went back to his 2016 playbook and stripped the EPA again.
So a historic rollback is putting human health and the fight against climate change at risk. President Trump and the EPA announcing it's walking back a landmark environmental decision to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. Trump arguing that the endangerment finding is a giant scam, despite the overwhelming science that greenhouse gas emissions can cause harm to all of us.
I tell them, don't worry about it, because it has nothing to do with public health. This was all a scam, a giant scam. This was a ripoff of the country by Obama and Biden. And let's say Obama started it and got it rolling, and a terrible ripoff.
Well, the purpose of the endangerment finding was to reduce climate change, counter wildfires and heat waves, and most importantly, protect human health. But with the pullback, the government is no longer allowed to regulate greenhouse gas emissions for vehicles, fossil fuel power plants, and other pollution sources responsible for climate change, which in turn, of course, can be dangerous for the air that we breathe. Will Barrett, the assistant.
So let me stop it right there, because again, that's all that part right there is all you need to see, folks. That part right there is all you need to freaking see. That he tries to say that vehicles, fossil fuels, power plants, and other pollution sources responsible for climate change, in his mind, don't happen. Now, why is that important, ladies and gentlemen? Because fossil fuels, power plants, big oil is doing its lobbying job the only way it knows how. Other pollution sources, coal. Coal is a dying industry. And yet coal, especially in West Virginia of all places, because coal mining is still big there. Again, it's a dying industry. And so what do? They lobby Trump because the EPA was coming down on fossil fuel emissions. They were coming down on coal and fracking and things of that nature. And because Trump is a businessman, and they basically gave to his campaign, he turned around and sat there and said, no, let's go ahead and reverse that. And that lets you know off the bat what will happen, because Trump is compromised. Diaper Don is compromised to the point to where if you give him a nice shiny trophy or give him a boatload of money, he's basically your parrot. All you gotta do is tell him what to do and what to squeak, and he will do it. Imagine a parrot in the highest position of power in the United States, and he can be purchased. That alone screams volumes. But speaking of screaming volumes, guys, because you people always whine and cry about immigrants taking your jobs, well, Taco is one to come down on immigrant truckers. And I'm gonna tell you something about truckers. Number one, truckers are wanted, needed, because if it wasn't for truckers and for the job that they do, some cities would shut down in a matter of days. And yet, Taco is wanting to remove immigrant truckers. So I say to all you MAGA fans, when are y'all signing up to go ahead and drive these rigs?
Down is now driving foreign-born truckers off the road. You were telling me you used to see 50 or so foreign-born students every year. And this year, how many would you say you've seen?
Probably since the new administration, maybe 10.
Disrupting an industry that's increasingly dependent on foreign labor.
Yeah, sir. Thank you.
ICE agents now showing up at truck wait stations as the Trump administration limits visas for truckers. Thousands of drivers taken out of service by the Department of Transportation for failing to meet federal English language requirements, according to Secretary Sean Duffy. And shippers say they're struggling to find drivers to take certain routes. Trump administration officials say the crackdown's necessary to make the roads safer after several high-profile accidents involving immigrant truck drivers this year, like this high-speed collision on a highway in California, where Homeland Security officials say an undocumented truck driver caused a deadly crash. 3 people were killed. And this incident in Florida, where another undocumented truck driver, according to DHS, tried to make a U-turn on a turnpike, also killing 3.
You have, illegals coming in, basically getting signed off on by the driving school, and then they go to the DMV and they get a license and they hit the road. They have no training.
The Trump administration's policies have started to have a chilling effect across the trucking industry. At driving schools like this one in the Washington, D.C. area, they say they have seen a drop-off in foreign-born students, and their former graduates say they're worried about getting caught up in some of these immigration crackdowns, avoiding taking jobs out of state or staying off the highway, even if they are in the U.S. legally and have all the required paperwork. You've seen a drop off this year.
Oh, dramatically.
English proficiency is already required to get a commercial driver's license, or CDL, but the White House is pushing for better enforcement. Transportation Secretary Duffy also announced new restrictions, so only certain visa holders could get CDLs. That move still in legal limbo, with a federal appeals court saying that the government's own data shows that non-citizens hold about 5% of all CDLs, but make up only a fraction of a percent of all fatal crashes. We reached out to the White House for comment, and they pointed us to this video of Secretary Duffy.
We don't see this as impacting the ability to ship products across the country. We're going to do it, and we're going to do it safely.
Some groups representing drivers say the crackdown is necessary, even if painful. Regulatory changes over the past decade made it easier for foreign nationals to get CDLs, which in some cases led to cheaper wages, too appealing for companies to pass up.
There's a lot of innocent people that were just trying to do the right thing to feed their families, get a job. It goes back to, trucking companies wanting cheap labor, cheap wages, and putting profits over people.
Driving a truck is a notoriously taxing job, with long hours on the road and time away from home and loved ones. Around the pandemic, trucking demand surged and companies scrambled to hire, leading to a spike in pay. But in the last few years, after a flood of new truckers entered the market, driver pay has hit the brakes. Government data shows foreign-born drivers, which includes citizens, make up more than 15% of CDL holders, and industry watchers say that number has dramatically increased in the last 2 decades. If the courts allow the Trump administration's proposed limits, the Transportation Department says it could eliminate almost 200,000 drivers from the road.
American-born truck drivers of any ethnicity found themselves at an economic disadvantage to some of the new immigrants who were here that were willing to take the jobs and willing to take trucking jobs at 40 to 50% less than what their veteran American equivalents were.
But now, on some routes, driver pays actually increased by as much as 30, 40, or 50% since last year, according to one freight analytics firm. Why? It says drivers have been hesitant to transport loads on some routes from LA to border towns with stepped-up immigration enforcement in Arizona and Texas for, quote, fear of harassment or delays, even if they have all the required paperwork.
I really have been going through some really tough times. It's been very difficult.
Longtime driver Rico Mohammed supports the administration's moves, hoping they will boost his pay, which he says has tumbled in recent years.
I don't begrudge anyone for trying to do anything to help feed their families and do things like that. But I think that there is a serious safety concern when you got people that can't speak the English language nor read the English language operating these big trucks out here.
Back in Washington, the Hope Project Training Academy says it will welcome more foreign-born drivers back as long as the law allows it and as long as they want to sign up.
I can tell you one thing about our foreign-born students. They were great drivers because a lot of them drove back home.
For now, an uncertain road ahead for trucking, what many see as the backbone of the U.S. economy.
Oh, it is. And the thing about it is, folks, the trucking industry is, for a lot of cities, you don't want that to go away. Because if you guys haven't realized, when we had winter storms that were so bad in the States, that stores weren't, especially grocery stores, weren't able to restock because why? They're waiting on trucks. Trucks can get on the roads. At the same time, that was just the winter. That was weather. Now you got to worry about having a driver shortage. Now, again, I got nothing against trucking. Trucking can be very lucrative. It's, if you can do the hours on the road, if you can do the grind and things of that nature, all more power to you. Because again, the way our logistics, the way our shipping and the way of business, how it operates, we all depend on truckers. We all depend on truckers taking loads across the U.S. It is amazing to me that Sean Duffy, the Secretary of Transportation, also an effing idiot, is now basically trying to echo what Stephen Miller, the Nazi, and what Diaper Don are all saying. Oh, but we just want folks who can speak English and work. Okay, talk to your MAGA cult. Because the other man wants talking about, well, immigrants are taking our jobs. There you go. The trucking industry. Have at it. Because y'all group are always first ones to say they're taking our jobs. There are also truckers out there that say, well, there's some people out there that that don't speak English and yet they're allowed to drive. Sounds like your problem is whoever gave them a license. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, much like anything else, y'all guys, especially in the food and services, hospitality industries, you guys cannot survive without immigrants. Let me stress that enough. When it comes to hospitality, so food, hotel tourist, vacation, things of that nature, you guys cannot survive without immigrants. You can't. Because you provide cheap labor, you provide cheap pay, and for a lot of people, those are the only jobs they can get. And you guys have profited off their backs for decades. So I can only imagine now if those groups left, a lot of y'all would be closing doors. A lot of y'all would not be business owners. A lot of you guys will be looking for regular jobs because you cannot keep your own doors open. But yet you want to go after truckers because, again, illegal immigrants are doing our jobs. Just like they thought illegal immigrants can vote. They can't. They do pay taxes, though. But it amazes me so that in a country that was built off immigrants, why are we not making it better, faster, and more efficient for immigrants to come into our country? Because y'all keep saying it's a problem, but I have yet to hear a solution from the Republican side. But they would rather you be the help and not the person expecting them to be the help. That's all I'm saying. But a couple more stories, guys, before we get to our Feel Good News segment. Again, I am not surprised about Amazon because this commercial, not the commercial they played during the Super Bowl, not really surprising, guys. And what I mean by that is this, that their partnership with the surveillance company after Super Bowl ad backlash. For all those that don't remember, there was a Ring commercial Amazon was doing talking about partnering with police surveillance company called Flock Safety that basically showed a lost dog to a network of cameras trying to say, if you find your dog, we can use this. And here's the thing about this. Of course, you pay for Super Bowl. You pay for Super Bowl airtime. That's 8 million plus easy, flushed down the drain and gone for 60 seconds. And yet Amazon, in their wisdom, if you will, thought this was a good idea to sit there and say, you know what, let's partner with the surveillance company for all those that have Ring cameras. Well, as you pretty much expected, Ring owners canceled their services, got rid of their devices, moved on to other Ring-like devices. Amazon scrambled. Why? Because they paid, I think they paid $1 billion plus for Ring, if I'm remembering right. I could be wrong. Please correct me in the comments. I want to say it was $1 or $2 billion they paid for the Ring company. So again, they're heavily invested. But the fact of the matter is, you turned around and sat there and said, we're going to work with a surveillance company. And at the same time, you're going to feel safer. No, people do not like the fact that their cameras can be used against them, and especially their data being used by another company to spy on them. which I find funny because this was the Republicans' argument for TikTok being a Chinese country, and the fact that not one American had eyes on it, or in their case, access to their metadata. That was their whole argument. The Chinese companies should not have Americans' data. We should have Americans' data because the government hates competition. So yes, Amazon has learned a very valuable, very costly lesson because nobody wants to be spied on through their own cameras that they purchased and paid for. And that alone screams volumes. But speaking of things that scream volumes, a couple of journalists are in the news, especially with one particular. One of my favorites, Don Lemon, ever since he left CNN and actually went to independent journalism, of course, was caused in the mess with the Church of Minnesota as Pam Bondi tried to indict him for saying that this was planned, that they were just basically disrupting under a certain act, which I forgot what the act was called. I am having a brain fart right now. But no, the act, so basically they're trying to stand and said that he violated an act that basically prevents those who are religious to actually be able to enjoy themselves in a religious setting. Of course, Don Lemon was just covering it, actually asking questions, and again, not being disruptive. Well, he did have his day in court to where he said he's not guilty, and just some fallout from that.
Journalist Don Lemon pleaded not guilty to federal charges in a Minnesota courtroom.
Lemon is one of 9 people charged in connection with a protest at a St. Paul church last month. The organizers said a pastor at that church was also a top local ICE official. Lemon has said he was covering the demonstration as a journalist and is not affiliated with the protesters. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespas following this one for us and joins us. Maggie, take us through what happened in court a short time ago and what's next for Don Lemon's case.
Yeah, guys, this was really striking. We expected this arraignment to go forward pretty quickly, and we expected Lemon to enter the plea that he did, which was not guilty. But his defense attorneys also got up and told the judge that they have a number of motions they plan to file, one of which tied to discovery. In this case, they said, quote, "We have serious concerns," this is just moments ago, about the application of these statutes to our client, claiming their words that Don Lemon was trapped in Los Angeles when he was arrested here just a couple of weeks ago in the wake of this church protest. And they said that when he was arrested in LA, which was a couple of weeks after the protest, that his phone was taken and they were told the phone was being shipped to Minneapolis. His attorney's saying today, we still don't know where his phone is. Then a federal prosecutor got up and said, well, actually, we have the phone in DHS custody. We have a warrant to search it. And that search is not yet complete. So that was one kind of detail that his defense team zeroed in on. Remember, the backstory of this protest at a St. Paul church was that protesters wanted to alert congregates that one of the pastors there works for ICE. And Lemon, on his live stream, said that he knew about the plans ahead of time for the protest, that he wasn't going to disclose them ahead of time. He went into the church with the protesters, is now being charged with the exact same federal charges that 7 protesters face as well, guys. Federal prosecutors not delineating between protesters and journalists in that crowd at all.
And Maggie, we know 4 other people charged in connection to the church protest also appeared in court. Remind us about those cases.
Yeah, so those are 4 of the protesters, 9 people arrested total, 2 of them independent journalists, and Lemon is one of those 2. But we had basically 4 other protesters, including a woman named Nakima Levy-Johnson, who's a local civil rights attorney in Minneapolis. She was featured prominently. There she is. I spoke to her in the days after the church protest, and she told us simply that she and other protesters wanted to, again, let congregates know one of their pastors works for ICE. They claim this was peaceful. They claim they were protected by the First Amendment, as does Lemon. I should point out this court appearance is still going on as we speak. And we do actually have a live feed, if we can pull that up, outside the courtroom of the crowd that's gathered to support Lemon and the protesters. One final headline, guys, to bring it back to Lemon. One of his attorneys that he's hired is an, as of recently, former federal prosecutor who resigned from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minnesota amidst what was reported widespread frustration in that office about the cases they were being leaned on to prosecute tied to ICE operations in Minnesota. So this has quickly become, as you can see, a bellwether case tied to the Trump administration's ICE operations in this city and more broadly as we wait for Lemon to leave today's arraignment.
So long story short, folks. So what happened was, as he explained, Don Lemon and others were going to go protest this church. saying that one of the pastors there was also a field ice director for the area. The act I was trying to think of, guys, was the FACE Act that they're trying to say he violated. Now, with the FACE Act, it definitely does protect women if they were going for abortion services or those that are simply trying to exercise their religious beliefs. Because Don Lemon sat there and said he knew about the protest before it happened. It was not going to warn anybody. Of course, with Pam Bondi thinks that her and the DOJ might have something. Excuse me for a second. Apologies, guys. Internet. Gotta love it, especially if you're on Elon's internet. But where was I? Okay, so Don Lemon and others were basically going in to protest about this. Don Lemon has sat there and said on recording that he did know that they were going to go in. He did know of the protest, and yet supposedly was supposed to stop it or warn churchgoers. Now, keep in mind, Pam Bondi and the DOJ are trying to sit there and say, well, they held people against their will. They attacked them. They were hostile. Of course, Don Lemon, didn't have anything live and recorded, actually walked up and calmly approached everybody that wanted to be talked to, and again, was doing so in a peaceful yet investigative manner. This is nothing more, ladies and gentlemen, than a fucking witch hunt. Don Lemon, much like Joy Reid, much like Jim Acosta and others who have either was let go by their networks or moved on from the networks, went back to independent journalism because that is what it's needed. Especially in this case, Don Lemon did nothing wrong, just like Georgia, just like everyone else that was part of the protest did nothing wrong. The only thing about it is that a couple of butthurt religious people were trying to stand and say, we don't want this protest. And that just goes to show you how some Americans look at things. How some Americans look at things that they would rather not see the world in front of them as long as the view with their head in the sand is fine. So we are going to follow this because every Pam Bondi indictment so far has pretty much turned up goose eggs for her. Keep in mind, she tried to go after former director James Coney. She tried to go after New York prosecutor Letitia James. She's tried, again, now going after Don Lemon. She's been 0 for 2 so far. I can only imagine this is not going to get past the indictment. I can only imagine. And oh, yeah, by the way, Mark Kelly, also his indictment was dropped. It goes to show you, Senator Mark Kelly, my apologies. It just goes to show you how much they're reaching the DOJ. You won't go after conspirators of Epstein, but you go after those that will probably speak against Trump and his would-be regime, and you call it justice. That's saying a lot. Also, another journalist, which again I'm not surprised about over in the world at CBS, Anderson Cooper, leaving 60 Minutes as well. Why? Barry Weiss. I mean, they can say Cooper cited a desire to spend more time with children as a reason for leaving. Let's be honest. Anderson Cooper started on CNN, eventually did go to 60 Minutes. Respected journalist through and through. But the thing about it is, fellas, ladies and gentlemen, that it's Barry Weiss. Let's call a spade for a spade. It was Barry Weiss. Barry Weiss, since she's been installed as the editor-in-chief at CBS, has gutted 60 Minutes, has watched everything that CBS as a station has put out. Why? Because she's been giving her marching orders from Trump. Keep in mind, guys, if it wasn't for a certain owner of Paramount who wanted Skydance, who sat there and told Trump, what do I need to do in order to get Skydance without, running into antitrust? What happened? Well, they caved the 60 Minutes lawsuit. Again, a lawsuit that has nothing to do with him because the interview piece was about VP Kamala Harris at the freaking time. And he tried to sit there and say, well, 60 Minutes did a bad editorial cut making me look bad. No, Dr. Don, nobody needs to make you look bad. You can do that all by your doggone self. But anyway, the owner of Paramount caved, paid out the settlement to Donald. At the same time, installed Barry Weiss as the new overall CBS head editor. The original director of 60 Minutes left. 60 Minutes became gutted. We've seen nothing but propaganda, including the evening news has been changed. It might as well be kissing up to Trump's ass. And now a respected journalist, Anderson Cooper, is on his way out. Ladies and gentlemen, what we are seeing is CBS News becoming Fox News 2.0. Fair and balanced, my ass, part 2. because Trump loves media that talks nothing about him because he wants to be praised. He's like a kid that if he takes a poop in a diaper, he wants you to clap for him because he pooped in a diaper. That's how bad state media is these days. But again, I'm expecting Anderson Cooper might go the independent journalism route himself, and also might be doing something similar to Joy Reid, to Don Lemon, to Jim Acosta. We shall see, because independent journalism is needed, because as you are seeing, guys, which each of these networks, with ABC, with NBC, other networks out there are being very careful on what they're saying. Why? Because the FCC, the guy in the FCC, along with Barry White's CBS, are basically doing Trump's bidding. Don't believe me? Stephen Colbert on The Late Show said it best. He had an interview. With a representative that never got aired. Why? Because of the FCC.
Tonight,
So what it comes down to, it, folks, is that you're hearing this a lot about the FCC equal time rule. So let me explain it real quick. So simply put, if a television radio station has to give equal time to candidates holding the same office. So in this case, for every Jasmine Crockett, you have to give a Marjorie Taylor Greene, you have to give Marjorie Taylor Greene the same type of airtime, opportunity, things of that nature. So yes, that's pretty much it in a nutshell, that radio station television shows need to do that. Now, the thing about it is there is an exception rule. Now, you probably heard the Jay Leno rule, because a long time ago when Jay Leno ran the Tonight Show, they did this whole thing about, we're going to be treated as the news as such. We're going to talk about the news as such. We are an entertainment show. So therefore, we can interview whoever, however we want. That's why they always call it the Tonight Show exception rule. That being said, with Stephen Colbert, whose show is going to be ending, just because simple fact of the matter is that he's been speaking against Trump since the inception, was bringing on a hopeful candidate, to which a representative was going to come out and talk about it. And of course, Barry Weiss and the FCC, Brandon Carr, all sat there and said, well, you can't do this interview. Why not? Well, it's violating this FCC rule for equal time. Really? Do you have a representative candidate? Do you have a Republican candidate that we can bring on an interview? See, there's the problem. See, Republican representatives, senators, and potential politicians will never go outside their bubbles. What I mean by that, folks, is they won't go outside of Fox News. They won't go outside of Newsmax. They'll barely go on CBS. And I'm not going to try MSNBC. They won't go to the areas to where they don't have home field advantage. That's why you don't see a lot of them. You'll never, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, you'll never see Stephen Miller on The View. You will never see the White House press secretary on The View. You will never see Sean Duffy on MSNBC. You will never see Marco Rubio, which I'll be surprised because sometimes he does pop up, but as of late, you will never see them on anything else that's considered right-wing television. You won't. Why? Because they know they don't have home field advantage. It's not like Fox News or Fox and Friends or Gutfried or whatever trash ass is being played on that network. They know they have home field advantage there. They're coddled. They're softballed. So it's amazing to me when you have other more popular shows like Jimmy Kimmel Live, Late Night with Stephen Colbert, Late Night with Seth Meyers. I can keep going down the list here. But when you have those type of talk shows that people watch and people pay attention to, you would think for 1 second, I need to be on both sides of the aisle. Republicans won't. That's why Brandon Carr and the FCC is so important, because they can enact this bullshit rule and Republicans don't do anything, but they can keep the Democrats from doing everything. And that alone should tell you exactly about the party that calls everybody else snowflakes, that complains about cancel culture, that will literally have a halftime show where a would-be singer talking about, I just want to drink my beer, eat my fish, wear my boots. You can do all that, you dumb son bitch, but that's the point they're trying to make. They are enforcing their idea of America on others, and they believe they are right. And nationalism is never right. Hence why we must resist. That being said, guys, we are going to move on to our feel-good moment of the show, because usually how Frack We Got Here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom, sometimes making use of faith in humanity. But hey, today's Wednesday, tomorrow's Thursday. We will leave you guys out some positive vibes, good vibrations. Yes, it's still Black History Month. Even though it's the shortest day of the month, we are still Black 365 all the time. And all the time, Black is good. That being said, I want to get this moment because for the first time in a prominent hospital, you see 5 Black doctors are leading the charge. And I'm going to be honest with you, it always makes me feel good to see a Black person with the words followed by a Black person's name followed by the letters MD. It is a beautiful freaking thing.
The doctors behind a different type of medical breakthrough. Take a good look at these 5 doctors. More than a portrait, it's a moment suspended in history. For the first time, 5 African-American surgeons now lead the trauma service at the preeminent Johns Hopkins Hospital. Tonight, we hear from some of the trailblazers behind this historic team.
My parents are so proud. I am the first physician in my family, and I think it's so impactful.
For Dr. Lawrence Brown, medicine is more than science, it's service.
That's what's important to me. Equity has to remain at the forefront of how we deliver patient care, how we do research, how we scale programs up in our healthcare system.
Dr. Zachary Numa is the result of service that was modeled and purpose that was inherited.
Growing up in Columbus, Georgia in the 1990s, I watched my parents, my mom, a family medicine doc, my dad, a general surgeon, show up to serve patients every day.
For Dr. Ife Shiombo, history isn't just remembered here, it's carried forward.
The best part is that I get to save lives and have an impact every single day. To anyone who's watching, realize that your dream and capacity can only be limited by you. And if you can think it, see it, then you can absolutely reach it.
History making. Finally, the doctors.
Oh yeah, definitely history making. And like I said, always feel good to actually see a historical thing like that happening, especially at a hospital like Johns Hopkins Hospital. But again, beautiful thing. That's going to do it for this podcast, guys. Thank you all for watching, for liking, for letting people know it's live. I certainly appreciate it. Some shameless plug before we do get out of here, guys. Shout out to APR TV. Why? Because How the Frack We Got Here can be seen on APR TV. It's an app that can be seen on the Roku channel or Amazon Fire TV app. Definitely check us out on there as well as other shows. You will not be disappointed. Also, BlurStation.com, guys. I keep talking about Blur Station as a streaming service that is for us, by us, movies, television, music, you name it. It's definitely there. And also, Blur Station will be at BlurCon this year, March 6th to the 8th. So if you do have a product, a show, or just something that you want to advertise on the Blur Station live stream at BlurCon, simply put, go to BlurStation.com, hit the live stream button, and you'll scroll down. You'll actually see our tiers of advertising. Select the one that fits you best, and that way, whatever you're promoting can be seen on the BlurCon, on the Blur Station BlurCon live stream this March. And trust me, it is definitely going to be worth it. Also, if you are going to be in the DC area, definitely do check out BlurCon because, again, it is a vibe. It is fun. It's also for the whole family as well. But also check out BlurStation.com as well, guys. $10.99 a month to stream Blur Station, and Blur Station can be streamed on all smart devices. Also, check us out on YouTube at How the Frack We Got Here. I do apologize, guys. I'm still in Facebook jail. So if you're watching, if you jump from Facebook to YouTube, welcome. If you haven't already, like, share, and subscribe to the notification button anytime we go live or a new show is uploaded. I would certainly appreciate it. But yes, eventually we will be back to being live on Facebook once more. But for right now, just bear with us as we are currently just going to be on YouTube and Instagram for the moment. Also on YouTube, check us out at Blurred's Eye View every Tuesday and Thursday. Not only myself, but also the rest of my compadres you can see down here. Room full of blurs, Geek by Heart, Safari TV Gaming, my other show, The Give It Podcast, Navy Montel, Showquo, Lore of the Culture, and Safari TV. Like, share, and subscribe from the Blurred's Eye View YouTube page, guys. Again, you will not be disappointed. Also, we do have audio recordings as well on Spotify, Apple Music, pretty much wherever you get your audio podcast. You can find How the Frack We Got Here there as well. Definitely like, share, pause, like I said, none of this, guys, cannot be done without you, and I certainly appreciate it. My own personal Black_Spartan615 is also on the social as well. You can like and follow me. I usually talk to everybody. Just don't make it weird. I want to get the habit of blocking people. Black men, please, oh please, get yourselves checked out. I know I'm a guy that stays in the gym 5 days out the week, so I get it. You know, gym is definitely helpful and therapeutic, but guys, please get checked out by the doctor. Make sure everything's okay. We want you here for the long run. Also, check out your mental. Your mental is just as strong, if not stronger than your physical, guys. So please take advantage of service and things out there if you do need help. At the same time, guys, protect your peace. You know, don't doom scroll. The world is going to be fine. Trust me on this. But definitely check yourself. Protect yourself. Protect your happiness. Check on your friends. And we will all get through this. I promise you. That also being said, guys, it is Black History Month. We are Black 365. Please go out there, guys, and find something of a story, of a historical figure that you may not know, because we cannot depend on these history books. We cannot depend on them trying to whitewash our history away, because our history is incredible. It is powerful. It is enlightening, and it can be encouraging. Trust me. Go out there and actually learn. You will not be disappointed. The last thing I'll say about the Frack Guy here, guys, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information allowing you to make up your own mind, but we do provide a lot of perspective when it goes along with it. We do better as a society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past, making decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first Black woman Supreme Court, electing our first Black woman as a Federal Reserve governor, and maybe one day electing our first Black woman to be called Madam President. All great things. We don't learn from history. We are doomed to repeat it. That's what we keep asking ourselves. Why does everything go up but our paychecks? Why are we electing different politicians but still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, the Frack We Got Here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Please take care of yourselves and each other, and I promise we'll get through this. Live long and prosper, guys. Peace.